My granddaughter called me at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. She was calling from a gas station on Highway 31, 40 minutes from anywhere. I could hear trucks passing behind her. I could hear her trying not to cry. "Grandpa," she said, "they drove off without me." I didn't ask questions. Not then. I said 4 words. "Stay inside. I'm coming." I grabbed my keys and I was on the road inside of 3 minutes. And I want to tell you something before I tell you the rest. What I learned on that drive home, and in the days after it, changed my family forever. Not because I lost my temper. I never raised my voice once. But by the following Sunday, my son was standing in my kitchen asking me to reconsider, and I looked at him and told him the one thing a father hopes he never has to say. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you who I am. My name is Frank Delaney. I'm 70 years old, and for 40 years I ran an electrical contracting business in this town. Started with 1 van and a license I earned the hard way, and by the time I sold it, I had 11 vans and 26 men. Half this town has my wiring in its walls. I don't say that to boast. I say it because it matters to what comes later. My whole life, my work was invisible until something went wrong. You never think about the wiring until the lights go out. Turns out families work the same way. My wife Ruth passed 6 years ago, 41 years of marriage, and it ended in 11 weeks. I still keep her reading glasses on the nightstand. I'm not ashamed to tell you that. We had 1 son, Michael. He's 43 now. Smart boy, first Delaney to go to college, and I paid every dollar of it with money I earned crawling through attics in July. He became a financial planner, wears suits that cost more than my first van, and I was proud of him. I want that on the record. Michael married Vanessa 9 years ago. I'm going to be careful here because this story isn't about hating anyone. Vanessa is polished. Vanessa remembers everyone's birthday and posts about it online. And Vanessa spent 9 years slowly rearranging my son's life the way you'd rearrange furniture, until one day I looked around and realized there was no chair left in that house for me. It happened by inches. Thanksgiving moved to her parents' place. Then Christmas. Then Michael stopped calling on Sundays. Nothing you could point to. So I said nothing. For years, I said nothing. But there was one person in that family who never rearranged me. My granddaughter, Emma. Emma is 15. She's got Ruth's stubborn chin and my bad habit of asking why until people get uncomfortable. While her parents got busier and busier, she kept showing up. She'd ride her bike to my place after school, and we'd sit in the garage, and I'd teach her things. How to solder, how to check a breaker. Her mother hated the grease under her fingernails. Emma didn't care, and over the last year, the things she told me in that garage had started to change. She'd say, "Mom took my plate before I finished because we were running late for Tyler's practice." Tyler is her half-brother, Vanessa's boy from her first marriage. 12 years old, and that household orbits him like he's the sun. She'd say, "They went to the lake house Saturday. I found out from Tyler's photos." She'd say it flat, like she was reporting the weather. That flatness worried me more than tears would have. I asked Michael about it once, casual, over the phone. I said, "Emma seems a little on the outside of things lately." And my smart, educated son gave a little laugh and said, "Dad, she's a teenager. They love feeling left out. It's their whole personality." I let it go. God forgive me, I let it go. So when my phone rang at 11 o'clock that Friday night and I saw Emma's name on the screen, something in my chest went cold before I even answered. Because Emma doesn't call late. Emma texts. A phone call meant something was wrong. Highway 31 at 11 at night is a dark road. No street lights past the county line, just your own high beams and the reflectors ticking past like a slow clock. I know that road. I've never driven it the way I drove it that night. 40 minutes. That's how far my granddaughter was from the nearest person who loved her. And here's the thing that made my jaw ache. Nobody had called me. Not Michael. Not Vanessa. Whatever had happened out there, the two adults responsible for my granddaughter either didn't know she was missing or knew and hadn't thought it was worth a phone call. I couldn't decide which was worse. I'd find out soon enough it was the second one. The gas station came up out of the dark like a little island of white light. I saw her before I turned in, standing inside, right up against the glass, arms wrapped around herself, backpack at her feet, watching the road. I'll tell you what 15 looks like when it's scared and trying not to be. It looks about 9. She was in the truck before I came to a full stop, didn't say anything, just pulled the door shut and sat there hugging her backpack against her chest like a life vest. It was October, and she was in a t-shirt. I turned the heater up. The kid behind the counter gave me a nod through the glass. He'd been keeping an eye on her. Some stranger making minimum wage had done more for my granddaughter that night than her own parents. I pulled onto the highway and drove a full 5 minutes before I said anything. 40 years of running crews taught me that. You don't get the truth out of somebody by standing over them with questions. You give them room and you wait. Finally, she said, "Aren't you going to ask what happened?" "When you're ready to tell me." And that's when she started crying, quiet, facing the window, and she told me. They'd been at the lake house, a family weekend, decided by Tyler's soccer schedule, the way Tyler's schedule decides everything. They stopped at the Shell station on the way home. Emma went in to use the restroom, and they left. 2 cars, Michael driving one, Vanessa the other, each parent assuming she was with the other. Mistakes happen. That part might even be true. Here's the part that isn't a funny story. Emma came out, found the cars gone, and called her mother. No answer. Called her father. No answer. Called her mother again, and this time Vanessa picked up, and Emma could hear the radio and Tyler laughing, and she said, "Mom, you left me at the gas station." And Vanessa said, "And I'm telling you word for word because I'll remember it until they put me in the ground." Vanessa said, "Emma, honestly, we're already almost home. Can you just wait there? We'll figure it out." We'll figure it out. Not, oh my God, not, we're turning around right now, stay where you are. Like a scheduling problem, like a package delivered to the wrong address. Emma waited 25 minutes. Nobody called back. Then she called me. I kept my voice level, and I asked one question. "Has anything like this happened before?" And Emma went quiet. The kind of quiet where somebody is choosing. Then she said, "Grandpa, if I tell you something, do you promise not to tell Dad?" Every alarm I've got went off at once. Because 40 years of crawling through other people's walls teaches you one thing. It's never the one failure. The breaker that trips tonight has been running hot for months. You just couldn't see it. I said, "I can't promise that, sweetheart, but I promise whatever it is, I'm on your side." She unzipped her backpack, and she took out a notebook. Green cover, corner gone soft. On the front, in ballpoint, she'd written one word, stuff. I pulled into a turnout and put the truck in park because whatever this was, it deserved better than half my attention. I turned on the cab light and put on my reading glasses. "I started it for school," she said. "Counselor said journaling helps with stress." And then it kind of turned into, I don't know, evidence. 15 years old, and she used the word evidence about her own family. It wasn't a diary. That's what got me. There was no feeling in it at all. It was a log. Dates down the left margin in that careful round handwriting, and next to each, a fact. Just the fact. March 8th. Family photos for Grandma's birthday card. I was at practice. Nobody rescheduled. Card went out without me in it. May 30th. Dad's work dinner. Families invited. Tyler went. I wouldn't have fun. June 14th. My birthday dinner moved because of Tyler's scrimmage. Then everyone was too tired. We didn't go. Mom said we'd do it properly later. I turned the page. There was a later. It never came. Her birthday dinner just quietly fell off the calendar. page after page, 14 months of it. Not one entry was dramatic. Any single one, Michael's voice was in my head saying, "She's a teenager, they love feeling left out." But you put 14 months of it in one place, in date order, in a child's handwriting, and it stops being moments. It becomes a pattern. It becomes a policy. 40 years I diagnosed electrical faults for a living. You know how you find the real problem? Not by looking at the one dead outlet. You map the whole circuit. Somebody hands you the map, you can see in 30 seconds what's been draining the system for years. I was holding the map, and the last entry was dated that same night. She must have written it standing in that gas station. It said, "They left me at the Shell on 31. Mom said, figure it out. I'm not calling them again. I'm calling Grandpa." Underlined. Once. I closed the notebook and looked out the windshield for a while because I did not trust my face. Everything in me wanted to drive to my son's house and take the front door off its hinges. 30 years ago, maybe I do exactly that. And I lose. Because the shouting man is always the one who's wrong. Vanessa would stand in her kitchen calm as a frozen pond, and by Sunday the story would be that Frank's gotten unstable, that maybe visits with Grandpa need supervision. I'd watched her rearrange rooms before. I wasn't going to volunteer to be furniture. Then Emma said the thing that decided everything. She'd gone back to the window, and in that flat weather report voice she said, "It's fine, Grandpa. It's easier when I don't expect anything. Then it doesn't matter." 15 years old. That's the sentence I'd want you to remember from this whole story, not the gas station. Kids survive gas stations. It's, "I don't expect anything." Somewhere in the last 14 months, my granddaughter had solved the problem of her family by teaching herself not to need one. And I know where that road goes. It goes to a woman my age who can't let anyone love her and couldn't tell you why. Not while I'm alive. Not this one. I drove her home. The house was lit up like a showroom, both cars in the driveway, and nobody had called my phone. Vanessa opened the door before we reached it, gracious as always. "Frank, you're a lifesaver. Honestly, these two-car mix-ups." Behind her, down the hall, Michael sat at the kitchen island. He looked at me, looked at his daughter, and said, "You good, Em?" Didn't come to the door. 4 hours after leaving her on a highway, from behind an island, I told Emma to text me when she was up in her room. She did. One word, safe. And I sat in my truck outside my son's beautiful house before I drove home. Here's the strangest thing. By the time I got home, I was calm, because I'd stopped asking the question that has no good answer. How could they? And started asking the one I've asked my whole working life. What does the repair look like? I made a pot of coffee at 1 in the morning and sat at Ruth's kitchen table with a legal pad. At the top I wrote 3 words and underlined them once, the way Emma had. Verify, secure, rewire. Rule 1 of any diagnosis. You don't trust one reading. The notebook was one reading, a devastating one, but one. Before I moved a single piece, I intended to know exactly what I was standing on. Monday I called the high school. I didn't ask about my son's marriage. Schools can't tell you that and shouldn't. I said I was Emma's grandfather and wanted to be on her contact list, and the counselor, a young woman with a careful voice, paused. The kind of pause that's the sound of a professional deciding how much they're allowed to say. Then she said, "I'm glad Emma has a consistent adult she can reach. Would you be available if the school ever couldn't reach her parents?" Ever couldn't. Past tense, dressed up polite. Somewhere in that building was a file with at least one afternoon in it where nobody came. Then I called Dale Pruitt, who lives 2 doors up from Michael and would testify for me in front of God himself. Kept it light, and Dale, God bless him, talked for 10 minutes without me asking twice. Gone most weekends, he said, both cars, Friday to Sunday. And then the thing I made him repeat, "That granddaughter of yours is responsible. See her bedroom light on those weekends, and she takes the trash bins out Sunday nights all by herself, regular as church. 15 years old, home alone whole weekends, taking the bins out, while the family was at a lake house she found out about from photographs. Then I made the call I'd been circling since Saturday. When I sold my business, Ruth and I set aside $150,000 for Emma, for college, so that no child of ours would ever start life watching her father count out tuition in attic crawl money. And here's my mistake, and I'll own it in front of everybody. My son is a financial planner. He talked me into structuring it as a custodial account, Emma's money managed by her father until she turns 18. It made sense. It was tax smart. And what could be safer than her own father's hands? The statements used to come to me once a year. I'd glance at the number and file it in Ruth's desk. Sitting at that table Monday, I realized I couldn't remember the last one. The most recent in the folder was from 3 years ago. So I called the custodian's client line, not Michael, and sat on hold 11 minutes with my heart going like I was back up a ladder. A young man took my information, and I asked for the current balance. He told me. I made him repeat it. $41,000 and change. $150,000 plus 8 years of growth should have been north of $220. There was 41. I asked when the withdrawals started, and the young man, uncomfortable now, said there'd been a series of distributions over roughly the last 14 months and that the custodian, being her legal guardian, was authorized to make distributions for the benefit of the minor. 14 months, the exact lifespan of a green spiral notebook labeled Stuff. For the benefit of the minor, a lake house that got a new dock, a new deck, a new boat. The minor was home alone taking the bins out. I want to describe exactly what I felt because it surprised me. It wasn't rage. Rage had come and gone on Highway 31. This was colder and more useful. It was the feeling I used to get when I finally found the fault after 2 days of chasing it. Scorched wire behind somebody's drywall, been cooking there for years. You're not angry at a wire. You're just done guessing. You know what has to come out, and you know it all has to come out. My son hadn't just let his daughter be erased from her own family. He'd made her pay for it, out of her own future, out of money his mother, God rest her, counted out for that little girl at this table. I flipped to a clean page and wrote a name I hadn't dialed in 8 years. Walter Briggs. The lawyer who papered the sale of my business, a man who bills in 6-minute increments and has never once raised his voice. Walter picked up on the third ring. Frank Delaney, this is either a wedding or a war. I said, Walter, it's a rewiring job. Tuesday, I put it all on Walter's conference table. The notebook, photographed page by page. The statements, my legal pad. Walter read for 20 minutes without a word, then took off his glasses and said something every grandparent should write down. Frank, I'll tell you what you have and what you don't. What you don't have is a criminal case anyone will touch. He's the custodian. The law gives him discretion. Family courts don't like grandparents, and prosecutors like them less. If you go in swinging, you lose, and it costs you Emma, because they control access to Emma. He tapped the statements. What you do have is better. A paper trail he doesn't know exists. A school file he doesn't know exists. A neighbor with dates. And a man on the other side whose entire livelihood depends on a license and a reputation. A financial planner draining his own daughter's account while leaving her home alone on weekends. He cannot afford for 6 people in this town to hear that sentence. You don't need a courtroom. You need him to understand, in front of witnesses he can't dismiss, that you know, that you can prove it, and that you're the one deciding whether it stays quiet. Leverage. Every negotiation I ever ran came down to the same truth. You don't win by shouting. You win when the other man realizes you can hurt him and you haven't yet. That's the only language people like Vanessa respect, because it's the language she'd been speaking all along. She just never guessed the old man in the work boots was fluent. So here's what we did that week, quiet as a Sunday morning. First, we loaded a demand, polite as a wedding invitation, on Walter's letterhead, requesting a full accounting of every distribution, citing the exact statutes. We didn't send it. We loaded it, to land at a moment of my choosing. Second, we built the replacement, a new trust for Emma, irrevocable this time, with a bank as trustee, never again a family member. Nobody can touch it. Not Michael, not Vanessa, not me. I funded it that Friday with $240,000, what the original should have grown to, plus a little for the insult. Michael's name does not appear on a single page. Third, the will. Ruth and I had left everything split down the middle. Wednesday I rewrote it. Emma is the principal beneficiary now, through the trust. Michael's share passes through conditions with Walter's fingerprints all over them, and there's a letter attached, to be read aloud when the will is read, that explains exactly why, with dates. That's what secure means. Before you confront anybody, the child's future has to already be safe, so that nothing said in any room can put it back in danger. By Friday, 1 week to the hour after a phone rang at a gas station, Emma's future didn't depend on her parents anymore. She just didn't know it yet. Neither did they. Which brought us to the last item, Rewire. Walter asked how I wanted to do it. A letter, a meeting at his office. He advised the office, neutral ground. I said no. Walter, for 14 months they made that girl invisible at family occasions. The bill comes due at 1. So Thursday I called my son, invited them to Sunday dinner, 1 o'clock. Told him I'd cook Ruth's pot roast, that it had been too long, and that I had some family business to go over. Estate stuff, boring, but better in person. And Michael, who had not called me once since I collected his daughter off a highway at midnight, went warm and easy the second he heard the words, estate stuff. "That sounds great, Dad," he said. "We'll bring wine." 14 months of documented invisibility, a drained account, a girl alone at a gas station, and all it took to get every one of them to my table in their Sunday clothes was a hint that the old man might be talking about money. Oh, I didn't mention Walter was coming to dinner. A colleague of your father's is how I'd put it. Retired now, helps with paperwork. Every word of that is true. Saturday night, Emma texted me. Mom bought a cake for tomorrow. She thinks it's about the will. Then, 10 seconds later, Grandpa, what's tomorrow really about? I looked at that a long time. Then I typed the truest thing I knew. Tomorrow's about you, sweetheart. Sit wherever you like. Tomorrow nobody moves your plate. They arrived at 1 o'clock sharp, and I'll give Vanessa this. She came dressed for a will reading. The good coat, the pearl earrings. She handed me a bottle of wine with a ribbon on it and said the house smelled wonderful. And for one strange second I almost felt sorry for her. She thought she was walking into a harvest. She was walking into an audit. Michael shook my hand with 2 hands, the way he does with clients. Tyler went straight for the television. Emma came in last and did what she always does at family things. Paused at the door to read the room and find out how much space she was allowed to take up. I took her coat and said loud enough, "Emma, you're on my right." Ruth's old seat. I watched Vanessa clock it. First domino. Walter was already at the far end of the table, reading glasses folded on a manila envelope, looking exactly like what he is, which is a retired man who helps with paperwork. I introduced him as an old colleague. Michael gave him a client handshake, dismissed him as somebody's accountant, and that was that. People like Michael only inventory the people they think can affect them. We ate first. I want you to know that. Ruth's pot roast, the carrots done soft the way she made them, and I listened to 45 minutes of Tyler's soccer season. Emma was asked one question the entire meal. Vanessa asked her to pass the rolls. Every minute of it was a closing argument nobody knew they were giving. When the plates were cleared, I poured coffee, and Vanessa produced her cake, and there came that little settling that means the adults have arrived at the real agenda. Michael leaned back the way he does in his office. "So, Dad, you mentioned some estate business." "I did. Walter, you have the folder?" And Walter unwound the string on that envelope with all the drama of a man opening his mail and slid the first page across to Michael. The room changed before Michael even read it because letterhead has a temperature and Briggs & Associates reads cold. "That's a formal demand," I said, "for a full accounting of every distribution from Emma's custodial account over the last 14 months. Whether it gets mailed to your firm's compliance office or stays in that envelope is going to depend on the next half hour." Silence has a sound. It's the refrigerator. I never noticed my refrigerator hums until that moment. Michael read it twice, and his face did something I hadn't seen since he was 9, and I found the broken garage window. Calculate, then choose. And he chose wrong because he chose the client voice. "Dad, I don't know what you think you found, but I have discretion to make distributions for Emma's benefit. You agreed to that structure. You sat in my office and signed it." "I did," I said. "I trusted you with her money the same way I trusted you with her. So let's talk about her benefit." And I took out the photographs, 8 by 10, 1 page of the notebook per sheet, and I dealt them onto the table one at a time, face up, like the world's slowest hand of cards. March 8th, May 30th, June 14th. And I set that one in front of Vanessa personally. Her birthday dinner, moved for a scrimmage, then too tired, then never. "Whose handwriting is that?" Nobody answered. Even Tyler had gone still. "It's Emma's. 14 months. She wrote it because the counselor said journaling helps with stress. Your daughter has a file at that school, Michael. The counselor asked me whether I'd be available if the school ever couldn't reach her parents. Dale up the street can tell you which weekends her bedroom light was on alone because she takes your bins out when you forget she exists. And 8 days ago, your wife told her, at a gas station on Highway 31 at 11 at night, to figure it out. That was a misunderstanding, Vanessa said, and her voice was still level, but I'd finally seen it, the hairline crack in the frozen pond, because her eyes had gone to the envelope and stayed there. She wasn't listening to the story of her stepdaughter's loneliness. She was counting pages. It told me everything about the next 14 years of Emma's life in that house, and it took away my last doubt about what I was doing. 14 months of misunderstandings, I said. That line up to the month with the withdrawals. Walter? Walter slid the second sheet across. $150,000 of a dead grandmother's love drawn down to 41 in tidy increments, while the beneficiary was home alone, learning not to expect anything. And here my son stopped being a financial planner at my table. He looked at that page, and he looked at his daughter, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in a year, and said quietly, "Em, did you write all that?" And Emma, in Ruth's chair with her grandmother's chin, said the only thing she said the whole time. "You never asked me a single question about my day, Dad." I stopped waiting. I've stood in rooms where a main breaker let go. That's the closest sound I know to the silence after that. Vanessa reached for her coat and played the one card she had. "Michael, we're not going to sit here and be attacked. And Frank, you should think very carefully because time with Emma is something we decide." There it was. I'd been waiting 8 days for her to play it. "Sit down, Vanessa," I said, and I did not raise my voice. I have not raised it once in this entire story, and I wasn't going to start at my own table. An attack is what happens Monday morning if that envelope gets mailed to his compliance office and the state licensing board, and everything on this table becomes a public record with his name on it. I'm offering you the opposite, the only meeting where this stays inside these walls. So sit down, hear my terms, and then decide what you decide." She sat. Michael put both hands flat on the table, and 43 years of my boy looked up the table at me, and he asked the right question finally. "Dad, what do you want?" I looked at Emma. Then I told him, "What do I want? In 40 years of business, I never asked for more than the job cost. I'm not starting today. Here's the bill." I read it off the legal pad the way I used to read an estimate. No heat, just the scope of work. 1. Restitution. What's gone goes back, plus what it would have earned. You sign a 5-year schedule at Walter's office this week. Not to me. I don't want $1. To Emma. 2. The custodial account closes. You will never again be the custodian of 1 cent of that girl's money. That's not punishment. That's me correcting my own wiring mistake. I put her future behind a panel you had the key to. It won't happen twice. 3. Emma gets a standing arrangement. Every Sunday she wants, she's at this table. I'm on the school contact list and nobody removes me. And if that girl ever again finds out about a family trip from photographs, this agreement is over and the envelope goes out. She's not a scheduling problem. She's the whole schedule. 4. Counseling. The 3 of you, with someone Walter and I did not pick because this isn't about control. I don't need to know what's said. I need to know you went. 5. And I looked at my son, only him. You start asking your daughter 1 question a day, about her. I'm not putting that in writing because paper can't hold it, but I'll know. She talks to me in the garage, Michael. That's how this whole thing came apart, and that's how I'll know whether it's going back together. Then Vanessa said, "And if we say no?" Because there's always one last reading on a dead circuit. Walter explained what Monday looked like in the tone of a man reading a bus timetable, the compliance office, the licensing board, and then I said the last part myself. Understand what I'm not threatening. I'm not threatening to take Emma. I couldn't and I wouldn't. She's your daughter. I'm telling you that 8 days ago I rewrote my will. Emma's future is already funded, already irrevocable, already outside this family's reach, including mine. There is nothing left in my estate for anyone to manage. The harvest you drove over here for doesn't exist. So the only thing left to decide at this table is whether you two want to be people your daughter comes back to when she's 25. The money's settled. The only thing still in escrow is you. My son signed everything that Wednesday, all 5 items, even the one that wasn't written down. Vanessa wanted to fight it for about a day. Then she did the math she's best at, a quiet settlement against a public unraveling, and chose quiet. The lake house sold in the spring. The boat went with it. Tyler's still in travel soccer, and that's fine. He's 12. None of this was ever his fault. And when he's at my table, I treat him like what he is, which is a kid. And Emma comes on Sundays. Not every Sunday. She's 15 going on 16. She has friends, a life, and that's how it should be. But most Sundays, that bike turns up my driveway, and we're in the garage, and she's soldering better than half the men I ever paid. Last month, she fixed a neighbor's lamp and charged him $20. And I have never been prouder of a single invoice in my life. In March, my son came alone one Saturday, stood in the garage doorway holding 2 coffees like he wasn't sure of his welcome, which he wasn't wrong about. We drank them by the workbench, and after a while he said, "She told me about her history project this morning. I didn't ask. She just told me." He said it the way a man reports a miracle, carefully, in case saying it too loud breaks it. It's 1 question a day. Some weeks he manages it. Old houses don't rewire in a weekend. I want to close with the thing I'd say to you if you were sitting at Ruth's table with me right now, because I suspect some of you have your own green notebook somewhere, whether it's written down or not. The gas station wasn't the failure. The gas station was the breaker finally tripping, and thank God it did, because breakers trip to save the house. The failure was 14 months of a child learning not to expect anything, in plain sight, 1 moved plate at a time. That kind of damage never announces itself. You have to go looking. So, go looking. Ask the quiet one in your family one question today about them, and then be quiet and listen like the answer matters, because it's the only thing that ever did. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't go to court. I didn't lose my son, though it was close. And some nights I know how close. I just did what I've done my whole life. I found the fault, I shut off the power to it, I took out what was burned, and I ran new line. They left her at a gas station on Highway 31. Now every light in her life is on, and I wired it myself. If this story meant something to you, there's a place for you here, with others who believe respect is earned quietly. I'm Frank Delaney. Thank you for sitting with me tonight. Please like and subscribe, and come back next time. The porch light's always on,